It is the task of the enlightened not only to ascend to learning and to see the good, but to be willing to descend again to those prisoners and to share their troubles and their honors, whether they are worth having or not. And this they must do even with the prospect of death. Plato. Hello everybody, welcome to my show. I am doing a continuation of my consciousness with the Plato's Allegory of the Cave. I'm going to show two videos and I'll let you see which ones. Actually, I'll let you see that now. First one is Allegory of the Cave by USUSoar. Links are all in the description box, except for if you're on DLive. No description box in DLive yet. So Dr. Harrison Kleiner lectures on Plato's Allegory of the Cave for USU 1010. And other video will be by Teach Philosophy, Plato's Cave, Divided Line, Forms, Metaphysics, Epistemology, Ethics, and Philosophy of Education. I've got a lot to say on this. There's just always too much to say. I don't know whether to say it now or whether to say it in different segments, but I can only do, at least without going crazy, without doing other stuff, I can only do up to 3 hours per day, and this may be an hour, maybe 2 hours. We'll see. And then going on to the next one. Of course, those would probably be an hour, 2 hours anyway. The idea with a quote, and that quote struck me pretty good if you're here at the beginning, pardon me, is that there really isn't an obligation to share with others the experience of the consciousness that people who've experienced and understand. People can gather the knowledge that's out there and use it for their own purposes. I don't know exactly, because I didn't want to take that knowledge. I was at the point when I was in the realm of consciousness that I had the option of knowing everything, but there are consequences of that, and I would rather have everyone else be able to attain that knowledge and then be ready to go, because until that point there's always going to be someone who is going to be bearing the burden. The mother force and the father force. The son becomes the father type of thing. It's weird. It's difficult to explain in the language that we are in, but I think it eventually can be interpreted and understood. It just has to be, there's just word knowledge that needs to be learned first, but it's very simplistic. When you're in that consciousness, you understand the simplicity of just how whatever language that you know, that place communicates with you until you understand it. And when you understand it, you're just thinking, oh man, that's just so simple. That's so, how do we not understand? How did we not figure it out? And so if I do a second show tonight, and I'm sorry, even though these streams are 3 hours long, it took me an hour and a half to prep for this. There's just what the material I want to show, maybe what I want to talk about, then the prep work on the computers. Not just one computer, but 3 computers, 5 different streams, just by myself, free, pretty much. I don't pay for any of it. I don't pay for Restream. I don't pay for YouTube. I don't pay for Periscope. I don't pay for Facebook stream. I don't pay for DLive streams. I don't even pay for the now Vimm.tv live streams. So on the top right, you'll see that Vimm.tv is something I'm using that should post to Steemit. Only problem is it only goes to, they say, hey, just use 2000 bit rate and 720p resolution. So you won't see as good of a resolution if you're watching this on Vimm.tv. The only reason I'm using Vimm.tv because DTube hasn't gotten their act together. I can't even get my stream key from DTube, so I can't stream on DTube. But I have to use something, figure out something to stream onto my Steemit. I still probably have to upload 4 videos to Steemit. I wanted to do that on DTube, but I guess that's not going to happen. I may upload it on Vimm.tv. Okay, so after this, I may do a word etymology, word learning, basics. I saw, I think it's a Plain Truth. They did a good one. It's basically reading off of Jordan Maxwell. So that's that. The basic thing I want to say is, and I wanted to do another episode on this, maybe I'll do it tomorrow night, is that the bad people, evil, greedy people, I mean, greed is just the simple definition is people who can't seem to have enough of something that they don't need. So greed people don't stop. That's the thing, is evil people, bad people, greedy people, they're not going to stop. You think you're going to put some president up there that's going to change the world? You think you're going to have some hero come and save the day? You think they're going to, the bad people, the evil people in this world, the people who want to control everyone and everything, the people who are full of greed, that they'll just say, oh, we lost. That's it. Game over. See you guys later. As long as they're alive, as long as they're breathing, as long as they have the resources that they still have, they're going to keep going. They're not going to stop just because they lost. And so to fight that, we need people who are fighting the good fight, who don't take more than they need. They do the exact opposite. Except the one fundamental thing that's the same is they don't stop. I'm not going to stop. I'm probably going to die doing this. Doing this every day as long as I can. I'm going to end up dying, I'm pretty sure. Either I'm going to get killed or they'll find some way to stop me. But I'm going to keep going. But I'm not going to stop. That's the only way that we win, is we don't stop. That's the only reason they keep winning, is because they don't stop. And people, majority of people, hell, I'd say 99% of the people out there, they haven't even started. Maybe they'll go down the bad way, greedy way, whatever, and they won't stop. But they'll never go on the good side. And if they do, they see how hard it is, like, I'm done. Bye. It's not worth it. People aren't worth it. But those people who stop, they don't understand the bigger picture, bigger realm of consciousness. Just go there. They're probably afraid. They're probably scared. They don't want to experience that side of death, or I wouldn't even call it death. It's just the next stage. Death is kind of the next stage. So they're not wrong. But yeah, just they're not going to stop. In order to fight that, we need people who don't stop as well in fighting them. Okay, I want to continue on to this consciousness and Allegory, the Cave of Plato. So here we go. This is going to be Allegory of the Cave by USUSoar. It's 31 minutes long.
Well, welcome. I'm Dr. Kleiner, and I'm your philosophy professor for the day. You Connection students have now all read The Allegory of the Cave, a selection from Plato's Republic. And I'm going to talk some about it today, help you unpack some of the things that are going on in it. And I hope that afterwards, you as a class, and just as importantly, you with your friends, talk more about it, think about different interpretations and all of the rest of it. A brief bit of background. The Republic is written by Plato. The dialogue was written in around 380 BC. Socrates is the primary character in the dialogue. And there was, without doubt, a historical Socrates. There was a guy named Socrates. He was a stonecutter by trade, but a philosopher by vocation, so to speak. And he had many students. One of his most famous students was Plato. So what we get, though, in the dialogue is a character Socrates that's in a dramatic dialogue. Whether or not the historical Socrates had this conversation or any of the other conversations that are represented in the various Platonic dialogues is unclear. Sometimes we have reason to think that he did have these conversations. In this case, I think we have almost no reason to believe that the historical Socrates had this conversation. Instead, Plato, who's obviously a great admirer of Socrates, is using Socrates here as a vehicle for putting forward some of his own ideas. The second sort of introductory note here is the dialogue, this passage for viewers, the Allegory of the Cave, is taken from the Republic. The Republic is a really long dialogue, 400 or 500 pages long. The question of the overarching dialogue is, what is justice? And is it better to live a just life rather than an unjust life? And they're trying to sort it out by creating a utopia. They're imagining a perfectly just city. And then from thinking about this perfectly just city, they're hoping to clear up what justice is and why justice is good. This comes from book 7 out of 10 books of the Republic. So you're about 3/4 of the way through the dialogue by the time this appears. But you don't really need to know much of anything about the rest of the Republic in order to get an awful lot out of the Allegory of the Cave. It's probably the most famous single passage in the history of Western philosophy. Some of you have perhaps read it before in high school class or something like this. So, all right. So with that, let's dig in. It's an allegory. An allegory is a kind of a story. An allegorical story is a story where the characters or the events in the story are meant to symbolize or represent something else. Very often, right, something real, right? So something in the story is meant to stand in for something real. Sometimes, and I think in this case, allegorical stories have a one-to-one relationship, right? For a thing in the story, it stands for some real thing. So an allegorical story most of you are probably familiar with is C.S. Lewis's The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, an obvious allegory. Aslan is quite obviously Jesus, right, who dies on the stone table and all of it. Peter is not so imaginatively Peter, right? You know, and there's it's an obvious allegory. Now, not all stories are allegories. The Lord of the Rings, that some of you might know, Tolkien was very clear that he did not want the Lord of the Rings to be read allegorically. The ring is not the nuclear bomb, or you know, isn't Satan or something like this. He didn't think it was allegorical. But this is an allegory, which means that whatever characters and events are in the story, Plato thinks that there is some corresponding reality that these events and characters in the story are meant to symbolize. Okay? Well, all right, so can one of you describe? Socrates starts off describing this image, strange image, as Glaucon, who is Socrates' interlocutor here. Socrates starts off describing this strange image. What is the image? Yeah.
There's a line of men chained together in a cave.
Okay.
Chained so that they cannot move their head or any other part of their body. And they have to stare at the back wall of the cave. The cave is open behind them, and there's a fire, like, I don't know, maybe at the mouth of the cave. And between the fire and them, there's like a walkway, almost.
Yes.
And it's also described as like a type of curtain with a walkway behind it. And people pass by on that walkway carrying like statues or like images of animals and things like that. And so what the people in the cave see are the shadows of those animals.
Excellent. All right. Now, first of all, forgive the lousy drawing. The lowest grade I got in college was in charcoal drawing. But it really was. But you have these cave dwellers. They are bound up in chains such that they can't turn their heads around. And they are looking at shadows that are being cast on the wall these shadows are being cast because there's this low wall up here with a fire, and people are holding things up. That's supposed to be a tree. People are holding up trees or monkeys or, you know, whatever kinds of statues. And they're also, we find out later, making the appropriate sounds, right? So they hold up monkeys, they're making monkey sounds, and it's echoing in the base of the cave. So these people down here are seeing these shadowy images and hearing the sounds come along with them. And then, you know, there is up above the real exit to the cave and the sun and all of the rest of it. Okay, so Glaucon says, well, that's a really strange image that you've shown us. And these are really strange prisoners. And Socrates says something that I hope you found a little bit disturbing. Who are these people in the allegory?
Like us.
They're like us, bottom of the first page. They're like ourselves, I replied. That's us. You are, Socrates, Plato's suggesting here, a prisoner in a cave, looking only at the shadows of things. All right, so what ends up happening here? Before we get to that, what are they doing down there? What are these cave dwellers spending their time doing?
They're trying to guess the objects.
Yeah, he says on,
Shadows.
he says on page 2, if they were able to converse with one another, would you not suppose that they were naming what comes before them? This, I think, is really significant. When you name something, what you're doing is you are identifying it. You're saying what it is. I mean, I have young children, right? So, and my favorite age is that kind of, you know, round 2, where the language theorists call it the language explosion, right? Where all of a sudden the kids start naming stuff all over the place. And it's great fun taking them to the grocery store, because they're just naming apple, orange, watermelon, banana, right? Naming everything. Now, what are they doing? They're rendering their world intelligible to them, right? This activity of naming is the activity of reason. It is our reason coming to intelligently apprehend an intelligible world. Human beings, this is a pretty unique activity in the world. Language, this ability to name. So they're naming the things that come before them because they desire to understand, right? There's some natural impulse that they have to render intelligible their experience, the world in which they find themselves. Now, of course, the trouble is that's not a tree. It's a shadow of a statue, which is itself a copy of a real tree, right? They're many times removed from really identifying the things, giving the things the name that properly deserve the name, right? The truth for them, this is page 2, would literally be nothing but the shadows of things on the wall. Now, of course, they're none the wiser because they've been down there their whole lives and have never been able to turn around, and this is their whole world, as it were. They don't know anything different. Okay, so now what ends up happening in the story?
The prisoners get released.
One of them gets released. We don't really get told how. He gets released, and what does he do?
He leaves the cave.
He leaves the cave. He starts, though.
Doesn't he stand and like feel pain because he's been stuck in the same position watching a wall?
Yeah, and it's worth noting here. This is on page 2. One of them is released and disabused of their error. At first, when any of them is liberated and compelled to stand up. You get the sense that one of them gets released, but he keeps just sitting there. He has to be made to turn around. He's compelled to turn around. And when he does turn around, it's painful for him because he's been, well, it's like the experience when you go to a matinee movie, and then if you go out the side exit where you go just immediately outside, so your eyes are adjusted to the dark, and then you go outside and the light is dazzling to you, and it's disorienting and even a little bit painful. That's the experience that he has. So he turns around, and it's, the light from the fire is so bright that it's, he's pained, he is uncomfortable and pretty unhappy. And then he's told by the person who's taking him out, hey, these things here, these things are nearer to being than the things you were seeing before. These things are more real than the things you were seeing before. Now, what do you expect his response is to that? You're crazy. Right? What kind of nonsense are you talking about? This is craziness. So then page 3, suppose once more he's reluctantly dragged up a steep and rugged ascent. He's hardly a voluntary participant, dragged out and held fast, now in the sunlight. You can imagine how disturbing that is to his eyesight, having had his eyes for his whole life been adjusted to the dark of the cave. He's held down, you know, look at it, the light, look at it, ah! Right, and it's really traumatizing for him, right? And he's pained and dazzled and irritated and really, really unhappy. Except, eventually his eyes adjust, right? And he starts kind of first looking at, you know, things, and then kind of slowly looks up, looks at the tree, and then finally, even though his mom told him not to, he looks directly at the sun. And when he looks at the sun, he sees the truth of everything. This is page 3. Last of all, he'll be able to see the sun, and not mere reflections of him in the water, but he will see him, he's kind of personalizing the sun here, in his own proper place and not in another, and he will contemplate him as he is, and he'll see the sun as the thing who gives the seasons of the years, and is in a certain sense the cause of everything else that is. The sun, somehow, what he gets to here is like the first principle of everything else. And having apprehended the first principle of everything else, he's become wise. He has knowledge. He understands everything. And he's overjoyed. And he looks back at his former comrades in the base of the cave, and he feels sorry for them. But he doesn't get to stay out there. He's made to go back down. And what is his experience when he returns? Yeah.
Well, when he's chained up again, and he goes back to like playing the game of like naming the things that are on the wall, he's terrible at it because his eyes aren't adjusted to the dark. And so all the rest of his comrades in the cave begin to like make fun of him, like, oh, we're never gonna leave the cave. Like if someone comes out, we're gonna try to. If someone comes to get one of us, we're going to turn on them and kill them so that they don't take us out.
Yeah, so you can imagine this guy's response. He comes down, he says, hey, guys, guess what? You've been living a lie your whole lives. Nothing that you believe is really true. But I've seen the light, literally, right? You know, the allegory here is pretty obvious. I've seen the light, I've seen the truth. And come with me, you got to check this out. You're crazy. Right? Well, all right, let's see how great you are. And they play like a Cave Dwellers Jeopardy game. It's like a knowledge bowl. Who can name the most things that come in front? And you'll see around campus, you'll see, it must be in some, you know, forestry class or something. You'll see students on campus walking around with a clipboard, looking really closely and intently at trees. And I presume what they're doing is, who can I sort of identify the various species of tree around campus? And the students that know the most will be able to name the greatest number of trees as they walk around with their little clipboards. I mean, that's what it is to have knowledge in a certain sense, is to know the name of a thing. And that's why when somebody says something rotten about us or something, we say, well, that person, she doesn't even know my name. Right? She doesn't know me because she hasn't named me. She doesn't know my name. So these people down on the base of the cave are like, well, all right, let's smarty pants. Let's see how much wisdom you've actually acquired. And he does terribly, right? Because he has the reverse problem. Right? You'll have this sometimes, your roommate, like you're getting ready to go to bed, and your roommate flips off the light without warning you. And if you're staring up at the ceiling, and you get those like starbursts in your eyes, and you're disoriented just in the opposite direction. So he does terribly at the game. And it's not just that they laugh at him. They think, look, this guy's dangerous. He's coming down, upsetting everybody's kind of conventional opinion about things. And so, yeah, they say at the bottom of page 4, if anybody else tries to pull what this guy's pulled, we'll catch him, we'll kill him. Plato is clearly referencing Socrates here, because Socrates was tried, found guilty, and ultimately executed in Athens for practicing philosophy. for upsetting people by challenging their conventional opinions. And there's no doubt that Plato is thinking of Socrates there, right? Because this is written about 20 years after Socrates had died. Well, okay. Let's think a bit more about the allegory. The sun is you know, the truth of everything in some sense. It's a first principle of everything else. We know these people are supposed to be like us. He didn't ever tell us who these people were. Who do you think those people might be? Any ideas? Yeah.
Maybe those in power, those who like to keep others in the dark.
So these people are most definitely in a position of extraordinary power, right? Because whatever they hold up determines the opinions and beliefs and attitudes of everybody else. They are in a position of incredible power. In our society, who might these people be? Who are the opinion makers? That's what these people are. They're the opinion makers. Yeah, the government, which shapes opinions by making laws that, right, that encourage certain behaviors, discourage other kinds of behaviors, encourage certain attitudes, discourage others. So the state.
Teachers and mentors.
Teachers. You could really get into a kind of Pink Floyd-y kind of interpretation here of teachers. You know, leave those kids alone, stop indoctrinating them into whatever ideology it is that the teachers are trying to indoctrinate them into. And of course, parents. Good parenting is just another way of, say, brainwashing your children, right? Because you want your children to believe this, and you don't want them to believe that, and you do a whole bunch of things to try to encourage them to believe that it's good to share, and you know, be honest and don't tell lies, and all of these other kinds of things.
Religious leaders?
Religious leaders, priests and ministers of whatever stripes who are shaping the opinions and beliefs of their flock, as it were. One more big one, I think.
I think the media.
Yeah. You know, where do people get a lot of their opinions and ideas that they have about what love is and what marriage is supposed to look like? But from, you know, television shows and movies and all of the music that we listen to. It's a powerful force in shaping people's opinions. So good. All right. So last bit of the allegory, you have these sort of two worlds. You've got the base of the cave, and then this world outside of the cave. What does Socrates say these two worlds stand for? What is the base of the cave?
Society.
Society, it certainly is the world of kind of conventional opinion and conventional, you know, practice.
Ignorance.
These people are definitely ignorant, because what is ignorance? Ignorance is misnaming things, right? Saying something is X when it's not X. But he gives more of a metaphysical interpretation himself. Metaphysics is that branch of philosophy that studies reality. And he says on page 5, that this world down here is the sensible world. It's, you know, the physical world. And this world up here, he says, is the intellectual world, the world of ideas. And so there is a sort of really interesting metaphysical claim here that Plato seems to think that mental reality, the world of ideas and of intelligence, is more real than the material world where things change all the time and they come and go. You might think of it in this way. The idea of a triangle is a three-sided enclosed figure whose interior angle summed to 180 degrees. That's an idea. Now, you know, there are material triangles, but those material triangles, they come and go. They don't last very long. In that sense, they're like shadows. They appear, but then they disappear. Whereas the idea, it remains always and forever, so long as there's at least so long as there's a mind to think it. For us, though, if you want to get into the cool metaphysical interpretations, take a philosophy class. For us, here's a bit sort of a toned down interpretation of it. This is the world of conventional opinion. People here have just accepted what they've been shown. They haven't thought about it. They are very passive observers and passive inheritors of the opinions that they have. This process here, as we'll talk about in a minute, is a process of getting educated. And if nothing else, the person who escapes the cave is sort of critically appropriating and inquiring into the beliefs that he has, which is a timely thing, right? You're all about to start college. And you've inherited a whole bunch of opinions from your parents and your pastors and your priests and your friends and the media and all the whole rest of it. The super exciting thing about the thing you get to do now is think about it. I've always been told that this is true. Do I think it is? Why do I think it's true? Are there good reasons for thinking it? Right? And a kind of critical assessment of those kinds of things. But really, the meaning that I think is worth us focusing on, though Socrates himself focuses on it, is thinking of the allegory as telling us something about education. This is page 6. Socrates says, he's talking about two different kinds of confusion. Sometimes people get confused when they're going from the dark to the light because it takes their eyes a while to adjust. And sometimes people get confused because they're going from the light to the dark and it takes their eyes a while to adjust. But he makes, I think, a good practical point for students. He says, don't ever be too ready to laugh at someone who's confused. Because people are confused for one of two reasons. They're either going from lack of clarity to clarity, in which case you should be happy for them, or they're going from a place of clarity to a lack of clarity, in which case you should feel bad for them. But in either case, don't laugh at confused people. Right? They're moving in one of the two directions. But he's been talking about this confusion that he says on middle of page 6. But then if I'm right, certain professors of education must be wrong when they say that they can put a knowledge into the soul which was not there before, like putting sight into blind eyes. Paulo Freire calls this view the banking model of education. In the banking model of education, the professor has some capital knowledge. The students all have empty accounts. And they passively sit there while the professor distributes his capital into the student accounts. The students will every once in a while make a deposit of their own in the form of a test or a paper or a quiz, but only to make the ultimate withdrawal at the end of a degree. But Socrates says, no, 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 that model of education, where the student passively sits there while he just receives knowledge from his professors, is wrong. Right? He says, no, instead what our allegory has shown is that, this is continuing on page 6, the power and capacity of learning exists in the soul already, and that just as the eye was unable to turn from darkness to light without the whole body, so too the instrument of knowledge, the mind, can only by the movement of the whole soul be turned from the world of becoming to that of being. The problem with these people in the base of the cave isn't that there's something wrong with their minds. Their problem is literally they're just looking at the wrong stuff. They need to turn around. Convert is actually another translation of the verb that's used there. Turn around, reorient themselves. Not just sit there and wait for somebody to bring light down into the cave. They have to turn around and escape the cave for themselves. Now, a condition of this, he says, is that they have to turn their whole soul. He says, if you want to see what's behind you, he says, you have to turn your whole body, because we're not owls. We have to turn our whole body around in order to see what's behind us. So he said, you have to turn the whole soul around to turn the mind around. With the whole soul, you have a mind. What else do you have? What are some other sort of basic features of the human condition?
A body.
You got a mind, you got a body, and along with the body comes
Heart.
so spirit, you know? The heart.
Bodily passions.
Passions, desires, and appetites, and then you've got a mind. He says, and you have to turn the whole soul around. Education, your capacity to get an education, is as much, if not more, a function of your desire as it is of the power of your mind. Your mind's just fine. The difference between my best students and my worst students is rarely a difference in mental capacity. It's almost always a difference in desire. You've got all kinds of desires, right? You want to watch CSI Anchorage, Alaska, or whatever. There's so many versions of that. And if you're sitting at home, like, well, all right, I really want to watch CSI Anchorage, but I know I have this studying to do tomorrow, right? It's the desire. It's whether or not your desire has been turned towards the object of understanding or not, turned towards the task of education or not, that will determine your success. It's very rarely a mental deficiency, right? A student not being like capable of understanding calculus. You're all capable of understanding calculus. It's not whether or not you want to or not that separates students out. The problem with these people in the base of the cave is that they're looking at the wrong things, and they've got disordered desires. They need to desire an education with their whole person. Because you won't succeed in getting an education if you just think you can do that with your mind but desire everything else at the same time. And that's why he criticizes, on page 7, these people with excessive attachment to sensual pleasures. Too much caring about what's going on in the base of the cave, and not enough desire for knowledge itself. Well, some other things I think we could say here about education. One, he rejects the banking model and instead says that students themselves have to be active. It's not a passive reception of knowledge. It's your education. It isn't mine. It isn't any of your other professors. It's yours. So you have to seize it. Nobody can get an education for you. You have to get it for yourself. Now, one other conclusion we might draw is that this will sometimes be painful for you. The guy escaping the cave, the guy who's getting an education, he's not always happy about what's happening. Because there's probably lots of other fun things to do, right? Other than wrestling through a passage of Kant's First Critique or trying to understand quantum mechanics, right? I mean, sometimes that can be painful and fatiguing and all of the rest of it. But, you know, that's just, he thinks, in a certain sense, a necessary part of it. Now, one last question. The other thing he never told us who the person was is somebody came down and released the person and guided them out, sometimes dragging them when necessary. Who was that person? Any guesses? I mean, he doesn't say. He gives us actually very little in the way of a clue. My reading is that person's a teacher. Socrates calls teachers, he compares a teacher to a midwife. A midwife doesn't give birth. It's not her pain. The sweat is not on her brow. The midwife has seen a lot of people give birth. She's coached a lot of people through it. But it's not her birthing process. It's not hers. In the same way, your teachers, it's not their education. It's yours. They can coach you through, tell you when to push and push and push, and it'll be painful. Sometimes tell you, ease up for a while, take a break. You've done enough of this. Now move on to this other thing. But their job is to lead you somewhere, though ultimately nobody can be led where they don't want to go. Nobody can be taken to a place where they don't desire to go. Which it doesn't matter how great your professors are, if you don't desire an education yourself, you won't get it. Your education will be, to push the midwife analogy, aborted somewhere along the way. That happens sometimes, unfortunately. Well, all right. There's lots of other interpretations you could give of this allegory, political interpretations, cultural interpretations. By no means would I want to insist that the reading I've given it here is the only reading that could be given. And I hope that with your connections classes, you talk about other possible interpretations, unpack these ideas more, think more about it, talk about it with your roommates and all the rest of it. You'll be taking a quiz pretty soon, so you'll also want to think clearly about the lecture and the reading and all the rest of it, prepare for the quiz. Have a good day. Thank you.
Okay, on to the next one.
So in this video I want to review how Plato's Allegory of the Cave is connected to his divided line and to the theory of forms and his philosophy of education, metaphysics, epistemology, and so on. Okay, and remember though, there's no substitute for actually reading Plato's books. He wrote approximately 36 books. So in Plato's Republic, that's his masterpiece, Socrates paints one of the most powerful images in the history of philosophy. And this is the Allegory of the Cave, which can be reduced to 4 stages. In the first stage, imagine that cave prisoners are chained and looking at a cave wall. They don't know they are chained. They don't know that they're prisoners. They see and hear shadows in the cave wall and they believe them to be real. And these prisoners represent the majority of humankind. So I'm going to pull up a PowerPoint, and these are a couple of images we have from Google for Plato's cave. You can see there. Okay. Now in the second stage, imagine a prisoner who's compelled to break free. Plato uses this word compelled. So the prisoner is freed from the chains and turns around to see a platform upon which people are carrying objects in front of a fire. And these objects cast shadows in the cave wall. The prisoner now realizes that the familiar world, since birth, right, the familiar world of shadows in the cave wall is actually an illusion created by people in the background carrying the objects in front of the fire. So the shadows on the wall, the prisoner now realizes, they're less real than the objects in the background casting the shadows, right? So we're moving from appearance to reality. Even though all his life, or her life, he thought the shadows were real. He's just now discovering they're not. Okay. Here's the third stage. Imagine the prisoner sees sunlight entering the cave and follows the rugged path to exit the cave. Or perhaps he's forced to exit the cave. Whatever the case, the prisoner is initially blinded by the sunlight outside of the cave, but soon his eyes adjust, kind of like walking out of a movie theater when it's, from dark to light. At first he sees the reflections of trees on the surface of a lake. Again, this is an appearance. But soon he sees the trees and other objects themselves, the actual trees. The prisoner can even get glimpses of the sun itself, right? And this is a higher reality than that inside the cave. And notice the prisoner would have never discovered it unless he had questioned the shadows in the cave wall. That is, unless he had thought critically, he would have never discovered all this. Now, the fourth stage could be where he or she apprehends the form of the good, the sun itself, or it could be where the prisoner feels compelled to return to the cave and help those still imprisoned. Now, upon returning, the prisoner stumbles around because his eyes are adjusting to the darkness. He's used to the sunlit world now. The prisoner then tells others of the higher reality, but he's mocked, because after all, the prisoners only know the shadow reality. And some may even seek to kill him, as they did Socrates. So it's interesting to think about what your interpretation of this allegory is, and there's no wrong answer. There's many interesting interpretations, but I'll try focusing on what Plato meant by this. For Plato, the world inside the cave, let me pull up this picture, the world below this line is inside the cave, and for him that represents the physical, visible, or empirical changing world. When people engage in the Socratic method, or they just think well, critically, they leave the physical realm and discover the non-physical, invisible, intelligible essences of things, the forms above the line, outside the cave. Okay. So let's use a triangle example to get a clearer picture of this. Here on the bottom left you see an image of a triangle. It's just an imitation of an actual triangular surface of an object. So the picture is an image and the triangular surface is a physical object. So here we are dealing with physical objects that change, that come into being and die out. However, if after studying and thinking about triangles you discover the essence of triangles, you move up here, then you've left the cave. Right? Now the essence is the universal definition. For example, the essence of a triangle is that it has 3 sides that encloses an area of space which creates 3 angles that equal 180 degrees. That is the universal, the essence, the definition of triangles, because it's what all triangles have in common and what all non-triangles don't have. Right? So now we have a concept. We moved from conjecture, belief, to concept. Okay? And well, from image, object to concept, conjecture, belief, and understanding, I could say. And even if there were no physical triangles, we could understand this concept. And then finally we get to the form, which is the highest stage, the form of triangle. And this is when we actually see that the concept or universal exists apart from our minds. That is, the concept of triangle does not depend on my mind. It's not mind dependent. It's an objective reality about triangles. It's like a law that actually exists, like a logos. So Plato seems to believe that the form triangle exists in a sort of heavenly, non-physical, non-spatial, eternal realm. And I'll come back to that point in just a minute. But notice the 4 stages correspond to the 4 stages of the line. So as you move outside of the cave, you're moving up the line, and I drew the line on the right over here. Okay. And you could say there's actually a 5th stage where you encounter the form of the good. I'll have to talk more about that in a minute. So let's illustrate with this with beauty too. If you ask me what beauty is, I may show you a picture of a beautiful lady there. Okay? But that picture is just an imitation of the actual beautiful person. But the actual beautiful person is just an imitation of the form, the definition and form of beauty. Right? So now you may think that there's no definition, no universal for beauty. Perhaps you think beauty is in the eye of the beholder. And maybe you're right, but how do you know this if you've never tried? If you never thought through the various theories of beauty that are out there? It might surprise you to think through such works, instead of uncritically accepting a relativistic position here. And that's one way to take Plato's stories. That is, he wants you to think critically about everything. Don't passively accept that beauty is in the eye of the beholder just because it feels right and people tell you it is. Don't passively accept what seems right like the cave prisoners do. Okay. Let's do one more example. Justice. If you ask me what justice is, I might just have some non-thinking reaction, it's uncritical. And that's at the bottom of the line. Or I might point to just people and their actions, like Martin Luther King and Gandhi, and start describing their actions and the person. But according to Plato, again, and Socrates, I don't really know what justice is, or beauty, or triangles until I can define them in a universal way, such that we include all just acts and exclude all non-just acts. That is, we need to discover the just principles. If I just imitated Martin Luther King, I'd be sitting around in restaurants that I disagree with. But that's not morality. Morality flows from the principles that King discovered for himself and utilized. So I don't know justice if I just point to just people and actions. I have to be able to move out of these physical, tangible way of thinking to abstract universal principles and be in existence with the form of justice. Okay, so the divided line tells us that the mindset, the epistemological position of the people at each stage of education. So at the bottom we have conjecture, and then the next level we have belief, and then understanding, and then pure reason. Okay, and you move up that line as you move from childhood to adulthood, if you move up it properly. It also tells us that we have knowledge, what we have knowledge of. That is, it tells us about metaphysics or ontology. So we have, down here on the left, we have image, object, right, concept, and forms. And the form of the good is the highest. And over here I drew the line a little more close to the proportions that he mentioned in the Republic. So the divided line, in short, helps us understand the cave and, in general, the philosopher's journey to enlightenment. Okay? So the general idea is that there's a hidden reality, behind the curtain, like in The Wizard of Oz, right? The world around you is not all there is. There is something higher and more real. The forms are more real because they're eternal and they govern all physical things, just like the law of gravity kind of governs all things, except Plato would have to think that the law of gravity actually exists too. So as in the movie The Matrix, the world around you is not ultimately real. So Plato says, wake up, you're being manipulated. The limits of your understanding are not the limits of reality. And it's interesting to think about who is manipulating you. You know, if you go back to this image, who is holding up the images in front of the fire? It could be advertisers, it could be culture. There's so many possible answers here. The sophist for Plato, right? It's very interesting to think about that. Now, I should also mention that the scholars disagree about the difference between concepts and forms, these two higher levels. So some say the third stage of the line is like mathematical deductive reasoning, while the forms are what we grasp immediately in rational intuition. And I'll just sidestep that issue. So now that I've connected the divided line and the allegory of the cave, let's summarize what the cave story means. The allegory of the cave illustrates Socrates' philosophy of education. So philosophy, or education, I'm sorry, is the process of exiting a cave. It's not just receiving new information. It's Socrates introduces the cave as a way to illustrate what happens when we become educated. The deepest knowledge is not about going to school and learning a skill or memorizing or dumping info in your head. Rather, it's an awakening, exiting a cave, turning your eyes to new things, understanding that your former reality is actually an illusion, a shadow world that is deceptive. When you have knowledge, you rationally, not with the senses, rationally grasp that eternal and non-physical laws or forms that govern this world. The second thing the cave story illustrates is Plato's metaphysics, not just his philosophy of education. And his metaphysics is based on the belief that the non-physical forms up here are more real than the many physical things inside the cave, below the line here, that participate in the forms. All the physical things are participating. They're images, imitations of the actual forms. So that's his metaphysics. His epistemology is also reflected in this allegory of the cave and the divided line, because we've seen here we move from conjecture, belief, understanding, pure reason, and so on, and then kind of a mystical, intuitive grasp of the form of the good. But his epistemology is basically the idea that I don't really know until I can give a sufficient definition, the form of a thing. I don't know a thing until I can sufficiently define it. So I don't know triangles if I can just point at one and say, hey, that's a triangle. I have to be able to define them sufficiently. And then finally, his allegory of the cave reflects his ethics. And the idea here is that in order to do good, look at justice, you have to understand just principles. You have to know the good in order to do the good. You have to know justice in order to really be just. Otherwise, you're just imitating people and kind of being just or having just actions by accident. So that's the cave and the divided line. And the next question is, well, what about the forms? How should we discover them? Okay, that's a long conversation, but I'll try to approach it here. And let me show you some characteristics of the forms. There you go. So the forms are objective because we discover them. We don't create them. So for example, I discover the interior angles of a triangle are 180 degrees. I don't create that truth. The second thing is the forms are transcendent. And this is because the forms are outside of space and time. The universe, if the universe were suddenly destroyed, the forms would remain. All triangular objects would die out, let's say, but the form of triangle would remain. One reason the forms are difficult to grasp is because they aren't physical. They're not in space and time, right? If they exist. And now, we might believe, or Plato believes, in such a transcendent reality in part because we have perfect unchanging knowledge of some things like triangles, but nothing in the physical world is perfect or unchanging. So that knowledge that's perfect must be of a transcendent reality. The third characteristic of the forms is they're intelligible. So we know them through thinking, not sensing. Okay? Another one is they're eternal. They last forever. The law of gravity, the form of triangles, they will be there forever, even if everything physical is destroyed. They're perfect. Everything is all triangles are striving towards perfection. All humans are striving to actualize their potential as a human being. They're imitating the form of human. They're archetypal, and they're, of course, one over many. That's part of defining them. Will Durant in The Story of Philosophy says we should think of the forms as like a combination of law, idea, and ideal. So forms are laws because they govern this physical world. So the law of gravity is one that we discover, and if you imagine the law of gravity as actually existing, then you're kind of thinking of a form in this sense. The forms are ideas, but they aren't dependent on the mind that thinks them. So they aren't just ideas, but they are objective ideas. Okay, so the form of triangle may be an idea, but I can be correct or incorrect about the form of triangle. So it's an objective idea. So we have their laws and their ideas, and I'll finish the last part in the second part of this video. Thanks.
All right, I'm gonna go
Gravity
and show the second part. Let's see how long that is. It's 6 minutes.
Okay,
13.
so those are the characteristics of the forms. And when I left last time, I was telling you about Will Durant's view of the forms from his great book called The Story of Philosophy. And he says the forms are laws, ideas, and ideals. And forms are laws because they govern the physical world. So for example, the law of gravity is one that we discover. If you imagine this law of gravity existing, then it's a form in this sense. It's existing in this heavenly, non-physical realm. The forms are also ideas, but they aren't dependent on the mind that thinks them. That's important. They're not just ideas. These ideas have objective reference. So for example, the form of a triangle may be an idea, but I can be correct or incorrect about the form of a triangle. I could say the angles, for example, add up to 181 degrees. Now, so this is a good response then. Even if the forms don't exist in some heavenly realm, it's a good response to the sophists, who were relativists, because it shows there is objective knowledge. Finally, the forms, according to Durant, are like ideals, something we strive for, because all triangles are striving towards triangular perfection, of course. They are triangles in virtue of their participation in the form of triangle. And all people are striving towards actualizing their human potential and ascending to this human form. So there you have it. Those are the forms. And one general argument, I don't think it's a very strong one, but to try to get a sense of an argument for why people believe in the forms, is the following. Again, we have perfect knowledge of things like triangles, but that perfect knowledge can't come from the imperfect, changing physical world. Therefore, it must be knowledge of a transcendent, eternal, unchanging realm, the realm of the forms. I think that's a rather simplistic argument. It doesn't really get to the heart of Plato's ideas, but it's something, it's a building block. Now finally, there's the form of the good, and let me pull up that picture again. Remember, the form of the good is at the very top, and it's represented by the sun in the Allegory of the Cave. It gives light to all things, just as the form of the good gives existence and being and goodness to all things. Plato even says the form of the good is beyond existence itself, which makes it completely incomprehensible. So we have this form of the good as the highest and mysterious form. It's the one form that can't be fully defined, and yet all things depend on it somehow. So I wrote a paper a long time ago where I argued that this is mysticism. So Plato takes this really rational approach down here, right, where you're defining the universal essences of things and the forms, but the form of the good is something you can't intellectually grasp. It's something you must experience. And this idea that you must experience it is mysticism. Okay. Again, he takes this really logical approach, but in the end you have to experience ultimate reality, apprehend it immediately. And I believe, part of me believes that what he's saying is that at the heart of reality there is value in goodness. It's not just dead, inert matter. Value is out there, not just in here based on my preferences. Value is built, goodness is built into the structure of the universe. So that's one way I read this, but there's another way too, and this may be closer to what he meant. We say things are good when they're actualizing their potential, or when they're performing their function well. So for example, a good knife is one that cuts well, performs its function well, and actualizes its potential. So everything is striving towards its form. So humans are striving to actualize their potential, knives are striving to be good cutting objects, and triangles are striving towards this perfection of interior angles and so on. And so in that way the good is in everything, because when you achieve good form, or understand the form of a thing, you understand its function. Okay, so there's another meaning here. It's not just about this idea that value is at the heart of the universe. Anyway, this idea of good greatly influenced later religious thinkers, and it does have some similarities with God, but I'll just sidestep that issue here. Okay, so let me pull up the slideshow again, and you can see there are criticisms of the forms. There's a lot of them. Okay, just to give you a sense, there's the idea that it unnecessarily duplicates the real world. It posits a multitude of essences with no ground. One interesting criticism is that if the forms aren't physical and they're not in space and time, then how do they control and govern and interact with things in space and time? You know, how can these things touch and interact and cause each other or govern? How can the forms govern? And this is very similar to the problem that dualists on consciousness face today. You know, but that's a problem. And there's so many. Let me show you this other slide. You can pause it if you're interested in reading them. But there are many criticisms of the forms. And Plato criticized his own theory of the forms in the book called the Parmenides. So there you have it. Hopefully this lecture gave you a better idea of how this divided line and the cave story work together to describe this process of enlightenment, this process of moving from illusion to reality, of turning your eyes to a larger perspective and broader understandings. The story of the allegory of the cave and the divided line just captures so much of his metaphysics, his epistemology, ethics, politics, philosophy of education, and it does it in a very intuitive and symbolic way. In the end, I think it reminds us that the limits of our understanding, I mean, even if you reject the forms and stuff, I think the cave story reminds us that the limits of our understanding or thinking are not the limits of reality, and what we take to be real may in fact be an illusion. And this in turn should lead to Socratic wisdom and just a sense of humility. Thanks.
All right, so that was pretty good. So I captured a few notes here. First, I always like the part where the people in the cave are still enslaved and shackled and staring at the cave wall, looking at the shadows, and they listen to the craziness of the person who went out of the cave, saw actual objects, not just the representation of the objects, and saw the sunlight and a whole different world outside the cave, and went in, and he told everybody, hey, this is what's out there, and what you guys are seeing, you know, it's not that it's not real, it's just not the base presentation of it. And they go, wow, this guy's crazy, this guy's dangerous, you know, the next person who does this goes out and comes back, we're gonna kill him, because these people are just too dangerous. And therefore dies Socrates, and therefore dies other people. The people who aren't dangerous are definitely the ones who are in charge, the one leading all these wars, the ones that'll be able to assassinate anyone who can order any type of agency to go ahead and kill someone, and then tell the media and the judge and the justice system, oh, you have to protect each other, otherwise we'll just kill you off too. No, it's the person who's talking about all these things. Those are the dangerous ones. Yeah, probably to the people who want to be and stay in power. But what's funny are the people who are in shackles, enslaved, saying that the people who are getting out of their enslavement are the dangerous ones. Cracks me up. It does. It cracks me up, but it also makes me sad. And have you ever heard anyone who of all the heroes of the past, or whoever they look up to, say, oh, look how ignorant this person was, he's my hero? No, you follow those heroes, those leaders, because of their knowledge. Which is why my goal isn't to know everything. I mean, it is to know everything, but only from the base point where I'm trying to gather that knowledge, where I just know enough so you can know, or whoever else comes about knows. Because I'm trying to get this knowledge from the people before me who have been held in high regard throughout history. I mean, no one's going to listen to me. I'm just a basement dweller who hasn't accomplished anything yet. You know, maybe eventually I'll become some billionaire. Maybe eventually I'll create actual justice in this world. Or I might do something else and someone makes a statue of me. I'm like, dude, don't make statues of me because I look bad. You know, my hair, I'm balding right here. You know, can you touch it up a little if you are going to make a statue? Look, no one's going to look at someone else that's current in this world in the station because this what's the station what makes someone great? What if you're nearing the end of your life, however old you are, say you're 70, 80, 90, you know you're going to bite the dust within a decade or two. And what's your goal? Is like, oh, I need to make more money because the end goal of the life is about accumulating money, isn't it? Or no, it's about attaining more power. I just need to, you know, run for office and control things, or use my money in order to control other people. Is that the end goal? Is that what you think the end goal is in life? Is that what success in life is? I highly doubt it. If you think so, good luck to you. So a lot of people out there, they're searching. That's great. It's like a weird great awakening that we actually see a decent amount of people actually becoming more aware, becoming more philosophically sound, not believing in the things that exist out there in terms of methods of control, and that they're sharing it. It doesn't matter who you are, how smart you are, how accomplished you are in this system. It's the truth that matters, and people are sharing the truth. And a lot of people out there don't want to hear it. I think the first lecture is saying it doesn't matter how great your teacher is, doesn't matter how great the material that's provided is. If the person who's learning doesn't want to know it or learn it, they're not going to learn it or know it. It's like what's that saying? You could lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. I'm pretty bad at those sayings, so but you know my gist. What's another one? All right, don't be ready to laugh at those who are confused. I think that was a good point in the first lecture. And Plato, I think it's okay. I think if you don't laugh in a kind of mean way, is like, you're an idiot, because, and I said it once before, even me, even you, anyone, even the smartest person in the world, the first time they learn something they don't understand or know, they're going to mess up. But you know what? Through those mistakes, through those messing up, and if their resolve, their ability to want to learn, to want to know, they're going to be really good at it. And even though everyone laughed and said, ha ha ha, look at that guy, or look at that girl, this is gonna be hilarious, right? And then off comes a couple years later. It's like, wow, how did this person accomplish so much, know so much? It's like, we saw the first time that this person did stuff, and we could always go back on that. Doesn't make sense. You're probably worse off in the world because of that. You're gonna be worse off because you just made fun. You realized, okay, I'm not gonna learn because I don't want to look myself a fool. That's the worst idiotic, ignorant thinking I could ever imagine. And excuse me. I think I had more stuff to that, but I'll move on to the next one. Okay, so people in the cave that are shackled see the shadows, but what they're really seeing are objects that are made of the actual representation of the ones shown in nature. So you've got a statue of a vase, a horse, a circle, and the eagle that you can see in the picture right now. Now, when the person actually goes, that freed himself, goes up into the outside the cave and sees the sun and actually sees how circular it really is. Someone who sees the birds flying in the sky actually sees a horse grazing and goes to a house and sees actual vase. It's like, huh, well, I didn't know that these are these the real things? Are these the base form? Is this just another object of a shadow of an object of whatever it is that I'm looking at? I mean, think about a tree. He sees a vast, huge tree just growing, just picking off apples. And it's like, wow, is this shadow? Wait, I can actually touch it, feel it. There's more senses to it that you can, right? When they're at the cave in their shackles, they're looking at the shadows. They're only using their eyesight, and they're not seeing a true representation of what they can see. And they can hear a couple things, what they hear. But they may not hear the real thing. They just hear the movement of those statues and those objects. So there's a second sense. Now, someone goes up. Well, he frees himself, and he looks at those objects, and he might touch those objects. And goes, wow, these feel hard. They don't, and they, or maybe they're soft. They just feel different. He's able to touch. And then he might try tasting it or smelling it. They don't really smell like anything or taste like anything. Maybe they're just made out of marble. And go, oh, okay. He goes up out of the cave, and there's more senses. He could smell the clean air. He could smell the tree. He could smell the grass. He could touch them. He can feel them. He can taste them. And it's like, ew, yucky, or good. Extra senses because of what's available out there. Now, is that the end all? And I think the reason why the allegory of the cave is so great is because we're outside the cave. So we're saying how, yeah, of course, there's more than what people in a cave would see. But what if there's someone out there, people out there here in the current outside the cave, seeing the sunlight and the grass, the sky, and they free themselves from those shackles, and they're trying to tell everybody in that world, hey, there's more than this. We've got more senses than just the sight and the hearing and the smelling and the taste and the feeling. There's more, and I see it, and I can not see it. I can sense it, and everybody's going, "What a whack job this guy is!" And then those guys who say, "What a whack job these guys is," if they go down into that cave and tell the people who are shackled, those shackled people are going to tell that person, "Man, what a whack job that guy is." So it keeps a repeated pattern. It's pretty funny, in a way. Sad too. Sad and funny. Isn't that weird? Okay, now let's go a little bit further too. Now, we see things that grow in this world, in this nature. In this environment, we see things that grow. If someone who never saw a tree, who saw a tree for the first time, who never saw a tree before, and saw this tree, and then it was an apple tree, and took the apple and ate it, and was like, oh wow, this is good. I think I love these things, whatever these things are. And he's gonna find a name for it. Someone else walks by, oh, that's an apple tree. You're eating an apple, really? And he goes, yeah. And again, good thing it's not poisonous. And so he looks at the apple and is like, he eats it all, and it's like, he's even eating the stem. Oh, the stem doesn't taste good. He's eating the seed. Oh, this doesn't taste good. And it's like, and he doesn't know what to do with this, so he spits them out and throws it away. And so the other guy's going, hey, why are you doing that? You should plant that seed. It's like, what? What's a seed? It's this small little thing. It's like, why would I want to plant that? And what do you mean by plant? And so the other guy goes, okay, well, dig up the ground, you know, put the seed in there, add some water, and just wait. And he goes, I don't get it. Why would you do that? So it could grow into another apple tree. It's like, wait, that little thing is going to grow into this huge big tree? You're out of your mind. You're a whack job. You're crazy. And then a couple years later, as this guy's out there, goes, wow, this thing really did grow into a huge big tree. How does that happen? You know, questions are asked. That's good, because in order to find out the truth of something, find out what it is, well, you're going to have to wait. You're going to have to ask questions, and you're going to have to see the answer completes its form, I guess you could say. And what that story reminds me of is actually, I think it's in the Bible. I think it might be even in the New Testament, like whichever it is. I think it's Jesus. I think a couple people, and one of the stories I tell my daughter is of a seed farmer. And I have 4 stories, which she gets to pick 2 almost every night. And she asked me to tell a story. And this story is just made up. I make up these stories every night, and I tell snippets of it, and they all go through some sort of problem thinking, solution. You know, how do they get past this? And my daughter does get worried, but she always wants to listen to the next part of the story. And one of them is called The Seed Farmer, and it's the same, somewhat on the same basis. The first story was, I didn't really make up, is someone is coming with a whole sorry, that wasn't it at all. Someone went and bought a bunch of seeds, and someone was saying, hey, if you want to make a lot of money, you might want to buy these seeds. And because they'll grow into these trees. And go, oh, that's awesome. Okay, I think I'll go and buy those seeds. Oh, it costs this much. It's like, oh, I don't have this much. Well, I only have this. So it's like, oh, okay, these are the same seeds. You can buy it for what you have, and here you go. And the person who buys the seed buys those seeds, pretty much everything he has, and he grows it, and it's nothing like the tree or the plants that it was supposed to grow into, and he's been ripped off. And so anyways, he realizes it's a mistake, and he finds a way to make a little bit more money, and he goes, okay, this time I'm going to buy the right seeds. I've got the right amount of money. He goes back to the same person, and he goes, okay, I got enough money. Those seeds that you got me weren't exactly what I was looking for. And the person who sold those seeds, the asshole, goes, oh yeah, of course, it was your mistake for not really letting me know that you wanted the exact thing I just told you. Is close to what you're looking for, but I don't know exactly what you're looking for. If you want the real thing, you just got to buy the real thing. So here it is. And so, okay, I got enough money. He's like, oh, the prices for these seeds just went up, so you can't buy these seeds, but you can probably afford these. And the guy goes, well, seeds, and the person told me that it would grow somewhat similar to the trees I was looking for, and it wasn't. So it's the same thing now. It's the seeds for the trees I wanted now cost too much. I can't afford it, and he's offering me other seeds that are close to it. And well, it didn't work out the first time, and I don't want it to not work out the second time, because it took a lot of time and effort to get what I have right now. So the seed farmer goes, well, you won't know what the seed is until you plant it. And I can't tell you what those seeds are. So I wouldn't trust this person. Because you won't know what you get until it's planted. And so therefore the person didn't get ripped off again. I mean, it's a different story than the original story, which is basically someone asking Jesus, hey, what seeds are these? And all Jesus says, why don't you plant them and find out, in a short way, in a not so very biblical way, if you want to say it. But that's just the basis of it. if you want to know the truth, just form an idea, and just let time, our idea of time, just let things progress and see what happens. If it's not what you think, or if it doesn't become what you thought it was, then most likely it wasn't it. If it becomes something that you had an idea it was going to be, and it seems to be that that's the case, and it keeps becoming that no matter what someone else says, then you're correct. And that's basically what science was supposed to be, is, hey, this is our best guess here, and so far there hasn't been anything wrong with it. No one's found anything that goes against this. Time passes, however much time passes, again I say time, things progress, and as things progress, more people realize, hey, okay, now we find issues with this thing, so it's not right. But then you've got the majority of population educated to saying this is how it is, and the majority of the population are going to go, we don't accept it. And science is saying you shouldn't accept it because there's things wrong with it. But the majority of the population, again, aren't going to do things for themselves, aren't going to find out the truth for themselves, aren't going to run the experiments for themselves, aren't going to look into the actual research themselves and question the research itself. They're going to see, oh, look at this. This scientist, he's highly renowned. He's got a PhD, he's got an award from this, and he went to this prestigious college, and that's all from media saying that this university is prestigious because why is it more prestigious than any other college or university education? Do you ever think about that? At any rate, you get to this point of pardon me. I don't know what the point was. I had it going until I started talking about what prestigious is. Anyways, I'm gonna pass that. I think I segued quite a bit. All right. So bloodlines, that's another thing. So I mentioned this quite often, and give me a second. I just want to make sure that people coming in, I can see him or hear him now. There we go. Sorry. All right. Bloodlines. All right. So people still think that people who have been born into some type of station have more rights and authority than you or someone else. And I always ask, why is that? Why do you think that? I always think it's very curious. It's like, did you or anyone else have a choice to where you were born and who the parents are that you were born to? Some might say yes because of religious reasons. And I'll always question those religious reasons. Really? You right now knew you're going to be born into these parents. You're going to be born into this situation. You're going to be born in this country. You're going to be born into this type of state and how it was going to be. Your parents were going to do this and do that. And by the time you're 18, this is where you're going to be. And all of that was known beforehand. You knew that and you chose it. And that's your, and all right. Fine. If you knew that and you chose that, why did you pick? And of course, there are some religions where it says, yeah, you pick because you realize there's things you need to learn, etc. Therefore, if you're going to be born into poverty or born into a royalty, that you have to kind of grow from that position, and that's why you picked that before you came to be. Okay, all right. Let's say that's true, and this is why I like the Plato dialogue. Even though I'm not talking with someone else, I'm talking with myself asking myself these questions. Okay, let's say that's true. Now you're born into, and most of the time, who you're going to talk to is someone of not royalty, someone who's not born into extreme wealth. You're not going to talk to those people quite often, almost never. Okay, so you're born into your position that you chose, and of course, a lot of people seem to be choosing being poor, being born to poor parents, being born into non-privileged royalty bloodlines, etc. Now, why do you, if you knew all this before you were born, and you're trying to get past this station or whatever, then why are you still on the path of having those people who are chose to be born into royalty and privilege and wealth and power to have power over you, that you will do what they say, even though that they're in the same position of you before they were born, before you were born, but you knew it was going to be some type of test. And I don't know what their reasoning, what their idea of logic would be. If they go, no, now if they're on a part where they go, no, they don't have any power over me, they're not more equal than me, they don't have more privilege than me, blah 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 blah, and I'm not gonna listen to what they say if they tell me to do something. And when that time comes, maybe they don't believe it. They will just give in and say, no, I believe it, but I don't want to suffer the consequences. I'm gonna do what they say because they have authority. It's like, okay, so you don't really believe what you believe. Then if you don't really believe what you believe, then why believe the other stuff? I think it's some other thing that I was watching I think it's Jordan Maxwell. I think I want to show that one next. Because if a person lies once, what makes you think he's never or she has never lied at any other time, or is not gonna lie in the future or anything else? So of all the people that most people, I'm surprised if you're still watching and listening, but the people that you look up to or want in office in some political power, because that's what a lot of people are fighting for, is like, hey, we just need to put this one person in office, and he's or she has been perfect, has never lied. Okay, lied once. Oh, okay, maybe lied twice. Oh, okay, they're being political because they're going to political office. So lying is just a thing that you do because it's a thing that you have to do because of the position. It doesn't make sense, but anyways, that's how people see it. So it doesn't matter about principle. It just matters that they're doing the thing that the job involves, which involves lying in order to doesn't that sound funny to you? It sounds funny to me. It sounds odd. That's a lot of people do that. They say, oh, it's political. You don't understand. You'll never be a politician. You'll never get voted. You won't understand what it takes to be a politician. I don't want to be a politician if that's what it takes. And if that's what it takes, why do we trust any politician? Again, it's just frames of thought, logic, if you want to call it. So bloodlines, does someone who's in a higher station than you, higher wealth, higher position, higher authority, royalty, position of power, do they have more rights than you? What is justice to you? Is justice equal treatment? What's equality to you? Do you believe all people and all ethnicities or races or sex are equal in what they're able to have and not have, what their freedoms are? If it's no, fine. I mean, you're going to if someone else believes that same thing, you're going to be at odds. It's like, oh, I believe I'm more superior than this. Someone else can say, you're not superior at all. Why don't you challenge me in anything? How about I challenge you? Are you going to be more superior to me in that? Oh, shut up. I'll just kill you. That's what people say. Is like, all right, try and kill me. Let's see who wins. it always makes me laugh in a way, in that sad way, that sad laugh again. That sad laugh happens all the time. It's like, really put I don't know where that saying came from. Put your money where your mouth is. People talk a lot of talk, and they never walk it. It's like, next time I see you, I'm gonna kill you. You better carry a gun. It's like, all right, next time you see me, let's see what happens. Are you gonna attack me? Are you gonna kill me? Are you gonna make me use my gun? Let's see it. You're either a liar, or you're a coward, or you are a violent person who will kill someone because of what someone says. And it's not a threat of violence, it's a promise of defense against violence. People don't understand the difference. And again, these people I'm talking to apparently are the ones who are shackled, saying, hey, you people are dangerous, you're crazy. Why don't you just look at the things in the wall? That's what reality is. That's what this world is. It just is. And if you think differently, if you think there's more than this, you're crazy and you must be killed. And that's what the allegory of the cave is with consciousness. That's a lot of people have different interpretations, but this one fits with me. It's about consciousness. It's about knowing that there's more out there than what we experience now. There's more out there than people experience past. There's going to be more out there that people experience in the future. There's more out there until we find everything that's out there, then that's the end. Maybe it's a new beginning at that point. But if your thoughts of the end is, oh, I was the best at knowing all the shadows on that cave wall, and here I lie 60 years old in my deathbed, and I am the most accomplished human being ever. Or maybe in this environment, I had accumulated the most money in the world. I am the most accomplished human being ever. All right, here's another thing I want to show you. So a lot of people, they think it's a good thing. I mean, that a lot of these rich billionaires are doing a lot of good in this world. And what do they keep doing? They just seem to make more money. They don't use that wealth to better the world. Otherwise, I mean, we have more billionaires than ever before. And how are things in the world? Are they better or are they worse? I would argue that they are worse. Even though we have more billionaires, and it seems to be from the media reports that these billionaires are more philanthropic than ever, that they're doing more things, putting more money into nonprofits and research, and for feeding the hungry, and for all figuring out how to cure diseases, etc. How many diseases have we killed? How many people are hungry still? I mean, it doesn't even take $1 billion to feed everyone in the world. Or maybe it does. I think it's in the US, it's something like a billion. In the world, maybe I think it might be 1.2 billion, who knows. But all the billionaires put together have probably ends up being $1 trillion or so. It's like, really, you can solve homelessness problem, you can solve the hunger problem. Man, you don't. You just accumulate more. Now, here's the calculations that I did. All right, this right there is $1 billion. Say you're 20. Okay, maybe say by 35 you became a billionaire. That's more likely because you're 35, you become a billionaire, and you realize, okay, I'm gonna retire. I'm not gonna invest any of my $1 billion I'm not going to accumulate more wealth. I'm not going to do anything $1 billion cash in a safe, etc. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to spend it all before I die. And I'm probably going to live 75 years. I'm going to live to 110. So for $1 billion, with $1 billion, that's it. Cash, no interest, whatever. You live for 75 years. Every year, you have to spend $13,333,333.33. That means every month, you have to spend $1,111,111.11. That means every day, you have to spend $37,037.03 or 4 cents, rounded up. Every day for the rest of your life for 75 years, in order to use all that money, you have to spend $37,000 a day. You know how many people in this world don't even make $37,000 a year? And so are these people actually doing good? These billionaires that you look up to that are paving the way for social justice, paving the way for equality, paving the way for peace, paving the way for solving, for everyone to go to outer space, for paving the world way for peace, paving the way for ending homelessness, paving the way for etc. Are they doing that? I mean, someone who really cares, $37,000 a year can go a long way into changing people's opinions, minds, just the way that they act. Let alone $37,000 a day. I mean, you can pretty much hire a person, 365 people in a year, and pay them $37,000 that for a whole year. So you have an army of 365 people, and then times that by say 10. That's 3,000 whatever. Add that by 100. Oh, it won't be 100 times whatever. 10 is still enough. 10 years, you're gonna be able to fund 3,700 whatever people to whatever cause that you want to fix. That, yeah, I think you could change a lot of things that way. But do we see that? No, because what they're in it for is to use that wealth to create more wealth. And some of that wealth is spent into these little tax loops, tax holes, however a lot of people want to call it. Hey, if we just fix this economic problem, the world will be fixed. Yeah, sure. There's plenty more things out there. It's just a broad problem that we have. And a lot of people expect the prestigious, the wealthy, the powerful, the elected, the religious leaders, the, I don't know what other, the whatever, all those people that you think they're higher than yourselves, and you probably attribute being the best type of people or the more successful people, and you're going to say those people will solve the problem. And how long has that mindset been? How long have these people solved the problem? Is there less of anything? Is there less rape? Is there less killing? Is there less hunger? Is there less drugs? Is there less terrorism? Is there less any of that stuff? No. And they go, well, it's because that there's just more people, and you make the excuses for these people. Do you think anyone who tries to solve something makes excuses for things that they're failing at? It's like, and they won't ever admit it. They won't say, yeah, It's my fault. I you know, I spent $1 million on this, and of course the people who were working to figuring things out with the $1 million that I spent couldn't figure it out. So there's that. I wasted $1 million, and it's their fault. It's like, no, it's did they do everything that they could, or they knew that they could? Probably not. I don't think they cared. It's like, here's $1 million, figure it out. Hey, everyone in the news, I donated $1 million for this cause. Like, everyone's like, oh, what a great person this person is. What a great philanthropist. Ah, gosh, I don't understand that. How to pronounce certain things, and maybe that's a bad thing. Maybe it's a good thing. Who knows? Yeah. So here I am talking to myself and 3 people listening. An hour 45 minutes gone. I want to go into the word thing about learning the beginnings of words, language, English at least, Latin to English. It's kind of a continuation on consciousness. I think that's where I'm getting at. I'm trying to tell people that are here, not tell people in a cave, about what's further out there that you can experience, that people are afraid to experience, or people are afraid to let themselves experience. And then people who experienced it, they're probably gonna say, oh, you're just a nut job, you're crazy. Allegory of the cave. So in at least 2,000 years, 2,300 years, talked about this. A long time ago, someone talked about this, and it applies today. Doesn't that make you at least think about it a little in the context of how I'm describing this allegory? And it makes perfect sense to me. I don't know if it makes sense to you at all. And many of you, of course, aren't going to even... It's like, no. Crazy person talking. I'm not going to listen. Okay, but there are going to be people who are going to be listening. There are going to be people who've gone through it, who've witnessed it, who understand it. And they're going to say, all right, we've got one more. Another piece of the puzzle's finally getting it. And he's interpreting it from a certain standpoint where I understand, and someone else is interpreting it from a point that I don't understand, but now I'm starting to understand it now because I listened to this person. So all the pieces start coming together and they're starting to fit. And the more that we go out and kind of reach out and connect from the consciousness to here, we're going to say, hey, so I experienced it, this person experienced it, and we're telling you that you don't have to believe us. Excuse me. You just have to experience it yourself and you'll understand it. And, if you don't believe us either, here are people in the past that have done it, who have experienced it. They talk about it. They know the details about it. It's not that we stole the idea from them. They had the idea. We didn't know until we woke and experienced it ourselves, that we weren't fearful of actually going out there and experiencing it and understanding it and telling people about what it all means, how it all fits, and how you can understand it, and why we keep doing it. Why do we keep doing it? I can understand someone doing it, or maybe you can understand someone doing it if they're making hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions of dollars. Like, oh yeah, he's just trying to make money off of it because it's something that they can make money off of. It's just how the world works. It's not about truth or whatever. It's like, okay, then why do I keep doing it? I'm not making any money off of it. I feel like I'm losing money off of it. And then you have other people who's like, look, if I really want to make money, if that was the end goal, if that's the whole reason for existence and being successful in this world, well, fuck it, I'm not going to be successful to you in this world. It's not about success to you. It's about success for me, and your success should be about success for you, not what other dictate what success is. At any rate, the entire point is eventually you will find others that understand what you've witnessed, what you've experienced, how you perceive the world, what part of what your experience can translate to the limitations of how we can experience it. I mean, a lot of people talk about how what we see, the visible light spectrum, is so small compared to everything else out there, and we think we experience it all. That's all that there is to it. It's all this. Yet, again, 90% of the world believes in something that crazier than this, crazier than what we would call astrotheology. Yeah, they're not the crazy ones, they're the sane ones. Okay, so I'm gonna move on to pardon me. I'm gonna move on to another aspect. I might actually go longer than 3 hours tonight, but it's not 3 hours of one stream. It'll be like 4 hours of two different streams. I'll show you the 38 minutes of something, and then maybe it goes on to 2.5 hours of Jordan Maxwell and astrotheology. And I might have it ready in half an hour. We'll see. So anyways, thank you for this. This isn't the end. Maybe when I have more thoughts at night. Again, I don't write any of this down. I take some notes of what I might have talking points of, and you can see these notes right here. See, it's just notepad. Sometimes I'm thinking throughout the day. Sometimes I'm thinking throughout the night. Of course, I'm always thinking. And it's like, hey, I could tell people about this because this is what I've been thinking of, and it makes sense. It fits. And throughout the day, things happen. I've got kids. I've got other work. I've got wife stuff. I've got family stuff. I've got relative stuff. I've got other stuff. Other things I need to support. Other things I need to prepare. Other things I need to focus on. Daily activities that you have to do within this system, which is silly if you think about it. And then I forget. And I think one of the things I need to start doing is, as I'm formulating these thoughts, I need to have a notebook. Not just my phone, because sometimes my phone, I don't know. I just, when I'm typing it down, it's a little too slow. I can't really type very good on a phone. I could type really fast on a computer, but I don't have, like on a keyboard, but I don't have a keyboard and computer on me at all times where I'm thinking. So I need to just carry a little bit of a notepad and just jot down notes. I can't believe it's been this long and I don't do that. So I'm gonna have to start doing that. I need to be more focused on writing down the things that I'm piecing together in my head. What it's like, you know how when you forget things and you don't know where something is, and or you just know the answer to something someone else is talking about, you know it, but it's just, you just can't, it's just not getting to you. The harder you think about it, no matter what, it doesn't come to you. And then all it takes is for you to stop thinking about it for a while, and then it just comes up and go, that's what it was, and you say it and you're done. 10, 20, 30 minutes later, however long it took, you just had to stop thinking about it, and it comes. So it's like that. You think about something, it's piecing together, and all of a sudden something that you notice, you see there's a sign, there's some type of thing that just clicks, and it's like, that's it. And then you're so excited at how it's so great, it's so important, it's so interesting. there's no way you'll forget it. And then you forget it. I forget it. So, notepad, notebook, everyone should do the same thing. Okay, I'm gonna stop. It's not the end of the night, but good night. I'll see you guys in a bit. Thanks.